What's going on, everybody? Bobby Fi here. Sheets should be joining me shortly. We got a big Sunday, some not so fun real life games and some much better DFS games. So kind of hard to fine tune exactly what I'm going with. I mean, early on, there's 5 games I'm focusing on. Here comes Sheets.
Hey, what's going on?
Hey, what's up, man? How you doing?
Good. What's happening?
So just talking through who we like for in terms of game stacks. Or teams that you want to target.
I'm not late, right?
What? No. Well, I mean,
okay.
I just started talking about it.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so why don't we start off and just talk a little bit about what you're looking to do today in terms of who you're targeting, because I'm having trouble narrowing my list of games that I want to target.
Are we waiting for Rhodey?
He's not going to be here.
Oh, okay. So what?
The Lions game.
I don't know what the format is. Okay, so what do you want me to do? What do you want me to talk
about? Curious what games you're focusing on.
Okay, so the 2 teams that I have, and just as far as we're talking about DraftKings for now.
Yep.
First of all, I am stacking a good amount of the games. I have like mostly either two V1s and 1v1s. Okay, so in context, like that's what I have.
You mean 1v1 receiver wise? So that would still be a 2.
Yes, quarterback with wide receiver with run back. Right, exactly. Okay. So my number 1 team, and I will say that I'm pretty spread out on this slate. And we talked about this earlier Tuesday, and I thought that there was a possibility that you can make cases for a bunch of teams, and it's working out that way. Now, this is like just in the Millie Maker. I might do something different in the big buy-ins, but I have the highest exposure to Seattle of anybody, but it's not that by that much.
Right.
Yeah. So Seattle, and then the next team I have the most of is Vegas.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So Vegas is the next team I have, but to give you an idea, I mean that's only like 14%. You know what I mean? Like I'm really have like little slivers of a lot of teams today, but overall Seattle and Vegas are my 2 highest owned team stacks.
Okay. Yeah, I think that the Vegas one is pretty interesting because I don't think outside of Jacobs, Jacobs and Moreau will get some ownership. I don't think anybody else is getting particularly a lot of ownership, and I still keep waiting for the Hunter Renfrow game. Or even you could throw Mac Hollins in there, but I don't mind that at all. The Vegas situation. I'm going to just make sure I've got this right. Here we go. Yeah. Because I did want to get a little bit of Renfrow as it was looking for some receivers in that lower range, but I'm into the Bengals. I know that it's fairly popular. But I do like the Bengals, and I don't mind the Carolina run backs with either Foreman or DJ Moore. I'm very into. I'm into the. I have like like 2 stacks of the Green Bay Detroit game, and I've got mostly other than that it's the Chargers Atlanta and Seattle Arizona. But I do have Buffalo with a little bit of the Jets run back, but for the most part just Buffalo with Conklin as a run back, because all these cheap tight ends, and we'll get into some positions and stuff, but all the cheap tight ends out there, why not take the guy who's had the most targets, who when they're down, they're down the running back, they're going to have to be throwing the ball. And I think that I think that Conklin is a really interesting play just based on that. And Zach Wilson hasn't been able to throw the ball downfield. So he's the guy at 3,200 I'm sort of going with the most right now in the run backs for the Bills games, at least. So that's sort of what I've got as my targets. The one game that I'm most afraid of not having more exposure to is Chicago and Miami. There is a little bit of wind there. It should affect things a little bit earlier on. Apparently, it'll lighten up as the day goes on. But I just couldn't. I don't want to stack everybody on the slate, so that's not where I'm going personally. And then I keep going back to something that Goldie said that you even kind of mentioned briefly. What about the weird 40 to 35 Rams Bucks potential, you know what I mean? And nobody playing it. I don't think I can quite get there, but I certainly don't mind if you want to go like in that game, like a Godwin and Cup, Godwin Higbee, something like that. But I don't think I'm going to stack it. But yeah, the main games for me are the Chargers, Atlanta, and the Cincinnati game, with some pieces of the Arizona, Seattle, and then the Buffalo side of things. That's sort of the target.
Yeah, I was listening. The Blitz. Then they really liked the Tampa that game.
Mhm.
Obviously, I mean it's a dome and all that stuff. But the other thing about Tampa, which is it seems weird because they haven't really scored a lot of points recently, but they're still one of the most, if not the most, pass heavy team. They relative to expectations, they really try to. They have a huge ratio of passes to runs. It's such a weird thing, you know what I mean? That Rams Tampa, that that the spread is the total so low,
Well,
but
they've
this is
thrown
what
the
these
ball.
teams but this is what these teams have become, like the Rams to me don't even exist, as an offensive team right now. I shouldn't say that. I mean, they're efficient or whatever, but
Mhm.
I think in my head, maybe I'm hallucinating, but it seems like they just kind of want to run the ball, even if they can't. You know what I mean? I think
Right.
they just kind of want to run it, and it's kind of hard for me to get to that game. But I guess if it's hard for me to get to that game, it's gonna be hard for other people to get to that game. And
Yeah.
and you do have the best, one of the best wide receivers in football in that game.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, I'm not getting too much of myself, but it's hard for me to argue. I mean, there's a lot of talent on the field, and there's supposed to be a lot of plays, and in a high pace, and I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting because Tampa has, they throw the ball a ton because they have a lot of plays, and a lot of it's because there's so many incomplete passes out there. The clocks go slower. But it's weird because they actually do like for the most part this season, outside of the two last games where they were getting smashed by Carolina. I don't know what the hell they were doing against Baltimore, but they were running the ball quite a bit in the other games before that. The one they didn't was KC. Sort of a similar situation coming back. It's sort of the game script, leads them that way. But they will run the ball. I mean, you still have Fournette, who's had 3 games of 20 more carries, and he also gets a lot of work in the passing game these days. So I like that play as well. So that's just worth talking about. But again, not my favorite. Going position by position here, starting with quarterback sheets. Again, it's going to be part of stacks. I'll just say my highest owned are Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, then both sides of the Atlanta game. And then I feels weird playing Mariota because they're going to try to run the ball with Patterson, but I do think Mariota at 5,300 is in play. And I didn't get to the Justin Fields, but I was considering it. I'm not going to play that much Geno. I thought he'd be more popular. That was more my main reason for not playing him. But I think I just like Murray on the other side a little bit better. So what are you doing quarterback wise?
Yeah, so like I said, Geno Smith, Derek Carr because of the stacks and all, but aside from that, yeah, Aaron Rodgers, Herbert. Herbert's interesting because I don't know exactly who's going to throw the ball to. They have nobody, right? No Mike Williams, no Keenan Allen. So that seems kind of like a rough spot. But I'll find somebody open.
I mean, Palmer had 12 targets. He's had a lot of big target games actually.
Yep. Yeah, and it's pretty much some of everybody. I'll tell you who I'm really underweight on, and this is so stupid. Beginning of the week, we should just put all our lineups in the beginning of the week. You know what I mean? I should just play Josh Allen with freaking Diggs and Knox, run it back with Garrett Wilson, and just be freaking done with my lineups. You know what I mean? Like
and Tyler Conklin.
Yeah, or Conklin, and Conklin too. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing here with 4% Josh Allen. I gotta be in the lunatic asylum. Don't cancel me. I'm not supposed to say that. I gotta be committed.
I think that one is actually acceptable.
Okay.
I think you phrased it okay.
Yeah. So that's where I'm like, if you had a thing saying guys that I'm under on that I got to be out of my mind to be under on, that would be Josh Allen.
Yeah. Well, so one play just opened up that is literally, a few in out of 150. It's James Robinson officially being active, which we sort of thought he would be. I just think if you're playing a ton of lineups, I would throw a little bit of James Robinson on the other side. There's a chance that they clearly don't want Carter to be their main running back. They've made it really clear. And I think that James Robinson is just a huge field play, not a main guy, because we're going to talk through some running backs here, man. And there are a lot of guys in the same price tier that I am going to be playing. And I'm almost just skipping. Like, I think I have one Jacobs lineup. I think I have one Aaron Jones lineup, and I think I have a couple Eckler just because I like the game. But I'll be well underweight on all those guys. The guys who I'm overweight on, I'm just going to overweight basically everybody else. Stevenson, Mixon, Etienne, I am going to take a shot still. I'm a little nervous with Jeff Wilson and see what happens there. I mean, he should be active today. So Mostert, that could take away a little bit of my love. He was one of my 6K guys who was going to be low owned. And early in the week, no one was projecting Dante Foreman. Now he's suddenly popping in the projection. So he'll be in the mix. Fournette, Mostert. The ones I'm debating on are, do I want to take the low ownership on Jamal Williams and trust that he gets all the work? Do I want to take a shot on James Conner back in that Arizona-Seattle game? And do I want to play Cordarrelle Patterson in that Charger game? So those are the three I'm still deciding on, but mostly it's going to be all the 6K guys for me. And I like all of them quite a bit. The only guy I'm using on FanDuel that's very different, I have 0 Deion Jackson on DraftKings, and I have him as a priority play on FanDuel because 5K on FanDuel at running back, when you're like, whatever, 60, 70% cheaper than the other running backs you're using, that's a big enough value that I can play him over there and just get my exposure that way, because I don't really want to play him at 5,200. You're not saving enough on DraftKings, in my opinion, with Deion Jackson. How about you?
For my running backs on DraftKings, my top 3 owned are going to be highly owned, I imagine. And that would be Ramondre Stevenson, Travis Etienne, and boy, I didn't expect this guy to be only 15%, but Joe Mixon. Those are the 3 guys that are the top of my ownership list. I have like 50% Stevenson, 40% Mixon, and 30% Etienne.
Mm-hmm.
Mixon seems like kind of a pure play to me. You know what I mean? Like they're the ones that, both and Stevenson too. More Mixon. They're a 7.5 point spread. You know what I mean? And that seems like the pure play. But Ramondre Stevenson's really good. You know what I mean? I don't mind him. The only thing that's, I won't say concerning, whatever, it's all baked into the line. But New England is missing their center and their offensive tackle, and their offensive tackle is being replaced by someone who basically leads the team in penalties or something like that. Believe me, I don't know why I know that, but that is the truth. And Etienne is basically the nuts as far as like a player. You know what I mean? Like whether he's the nuts at 6,300 compared to those other 3 is another story. But I have all 3 of those together. Then I'm kind of with the field on Jacobs, like maybe like 15%. Maybe with the field on Deion Jackson on DraftKings, right? Like 15%. And then I'm getting Austin Eckler, maybe like 15%.
Sounds like you're pretty much with the field at running back. It sounds like.
Yeah, it looks that way. Actually, as a matter of fact, it's so funny when I sort by leverage. I guess where I'm leveraged the most is just being a full 45% Mixon. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I guess that's where that is. Yeah. And a full 55% Ramondre as opposed to the 30-35, which he probably is, right? And then so I'm actually a little bit ahead of the field on all the chalk.
Yep, I think it's cool. I think that certainly makes some sense. I think that if you're playing a bunch of lineups and you want to try to get different, I think spending the extra 400 or 500 versus Jacob and Jones, I think you can take a shot with Dalvin Cook this week. We haven't really seen that big game, but that would be the other guy I would include in, if I'm playing a bunch of lineups, because I think there's a lot of very, very viable guys that I have projected really, really similarly, and kind of hard for me to get off of those 6K guys that I really like so much.
I've got somebody for you.
Okay.
Now I don't really have him, but I just noticed I don't have him. I'm gonna suggest Antonio Gibson again. If they went McKissick out, I think it's his. I don't know. Didn't he get
Brian Robinson last week? It's really hard. He's not like Gibson is not necessarily. He's not really the starter.
Okay.
Just got to keep that in mind about him.
But we went through this on Tuesday, right? I thought that he was kind of trending towards actually I don't know. He got more.
They were throwing the ball, they were throwing the ball, so he had the 7 targets last week. Yeah. He's been out carried, I believe.
No, last week he was not. Last week he was equal carry.
No, it was 7 versus 8. He had 7. Robinson had 8. But again, it was a more of a game script thing, which this could be that game script. So I actually could see it. Why they've been so resistant to just giving him the job, I don't really understand, because he's very productive. And I mean, I think it's an interesting call. I do. I can't bring myself to click the button for some reason, just because I have all these running backs ahead of him that are going to be getting all the work. But I mean, that is certainly interesting. Like it's probably a little bit lower owned than it should be at this price. And would it be surprising if he beats all these 6K guys? I don't think it'd be that surprising. Yeah. Anyway, and maybe part of why I didn't get to him is because I'm not as much on that game too. That's another
Right.
thing.
Yep.
But I do think that's kind of that is an interesting play. I'm just going to take a quick look and see what his ownership is right now because I think it is pretty low. Yeah, about 6% projected at 5,500. I think you could certainly do worse. But if Brian Robinson runs in for 2 touchdowns, don't be mad because I wouldn't be counting on goal line touches necessarily for Mr. Gibson, but it's possible. All right, guys, firing in questions as we go along. Sheets, now we're going to get into the hard part of the slate because it's easy to like all these. I'm, my core guys at receiver are I feel good about all of them, and they're all going to be pretty highly owned, with the exception of we'll see what happens with DeAndre Carter in the next, 20 minutes probably, whether or not he's active. If he's out, then it's going to be Michael Bandy, pretty popular. Josh Palmer, Drake London, DeAndre Hopkins, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think Drake London is the only one of those guys that stays low owned on DraftKings, assuming that Carter is good to go. But that's sort of my core for receivers. There's a bunch of other guys I'm mixing in. I like a lot of Amon-Ra St. Brown. I like Chris Godwin. I have some DJ Moore in my Cincinnati run backs. I'm not getting to as much of Tyreek Hill, but I did throw in a couple of Jalen Waddle just to get the low ownership. And Khalif Raymond, Hunter Renfrow, and Michael Bandy are my cheapos, considering Curtis Samuel and Zay Jones. How about you for your receivers?
My highest owned wide receiver on November 6, 2022 is the aforementioned Khalif Raymond. That's my highest owned receiver at 26%, which I don't know if 6% ownership is accurate, but if so, that brings me to a 20% leverage score on him. My next highest is Tyreek Hill. And then after that, the other aforementioned, Amon-Ra St. Brown. So I'm very heavy, obviously, on those Detroit guys. Then I have Hopkins and Lockett, both from that Arizona game. Then I have Zay Jones coming from that, that Vegas game that I'm getting more of than most people, I guess. Then what other guys you didn't mention? I mean, you've already mentioned Cooper Kupp, at least by description. So Kupp, Josh Palmer. I got to wait on that LAC news like everybody else. And then I'm mid 10%ers like DJ Moore, Godwin, Diggs, Marvin Jones, Wilson, Samuel. So that's, I guess, my big take is that's my highest owned is the Khalif Raymond.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what to do because I have Khalif Raymond and Zay Jones rated very similarly. Mm-hmm. I think I prefer Zay Jones, but I'm very, very close between the two of them. And I like that you got to stand there at least a little bit with him. I do think he's going to get ownership, but I think that this is still a good enough spot where he can get there. All right. Let's talk about tight ends because I think this is another one where you have a slew of guys who I don't think are all that different, which means I'm going to play a little bit the ownership game here and try and get the lower owned of the bunch. But I personally am going to be highest on Conklin, I believe. I just think they're going to have to throw the ball a ton, and he's for some reason not going to project as well as the other guys are. And, he's had a massive week last week. He's had, I believe, 4 games over 8 targets, which is pretty unusual for tight ends. I really like Higbee. Moreau and Tunyon I'm fine with, but they're the higher owned guys. I'll fade them for Higbee, Hurst, Conklin, Kyle Pitts, and Dawson Knox. Those are the main guys I'm using. Don't mind if you want to take a shot with Noah Fant at some day. One of these days he's gonna I don't want to say break a slate, but he'll have a big game. So
yeah, I think it pretty much. I think you pretty much mentioned them all. I mean, Foster Moreau, Tunyon, Kyle Pitts. I don't know if you mentioned Evan Ingram, but Evan Ingram.
Yeah.
Conklin, you mentioned him. Higbee, you mentioned him. I'll throw in, I presume if you're playing Bengals or whatever, that Hayden Hurst has got to get in there somewhere. So some Hayden Hurst. And that's pretty much everybody I have over 5%.
Yep. Yeah, and for me, I'm siding mostly with the Conklin, Hurst, and Pitts and Higbee are my.
I think Conklin fits this game pretty well for you, actually.
Me too.
As Buffalo, I mean, they don't allow a lot deep. You know what I mean? Like, and they bring pressure with only 3 or 4 guys. So Wilson, unless he wants to get in a game with a world of freaking interceptions and hurt, he's gonna probably try to look underneath. You know what I mean? Like the combination of pressure plus like the zone and whatever it is, it's probably gonna look for the big target. And I think that Conklin is I I think that's a good play.
Yeah. I hope so. All right. Let's move over. Talk about just real quickly some defenses that you're using. Why don't you start it off?
So my highest owned defense, this is going to be this is the beauty of GPP. So my highest owned stack is Seattle. My highest owned defense is Arizona. Let's go. that's the way it goes, right? But again, I capped my exposure to 15%. And what would a day be if I didn't have 15% of the defense playing against Buffalo? Of course. Why wouldn't I have the Jets? The Bucks seem like a good play, but if they're between the Bucks and the Panthers, I mean, if they're the big chalk here, boy, oh boy, I just don't think you should do it. You know what I mean? I don't think you should get overweight, for example, to the Bucks and the Panthers at 12 and 15% ownership. I just don't think that's the right idea. They do rate to be, the two best plays, but that's that. Other guys I have, Bengals certainly make a lot of sense, but they're 4K. The Bears look decent. And the cool thing about the Bears one is they can get a 0 in today's game against Miami, that's for sure.
Oh, for sure.
But, Tua gives me a heart attack whenever I watch him play. I need him. His little this and the timing patterns down the field, and boy, those are rough. So he's probably going to put up 30 against them, but who knows? I think Bears are a pretty good play as well, but they're also going to be it's 5%. They're not really. You like anything particular in defense?
So I do think Carolina. I'm going to spend down a defense for the most part. I think Carolina. I will use some Jets. Carolina, Washington. Don't mind the Bears, Seahawks, Colts. Those are sort of the main defenses I'm using, along with the pretty chalky Bucks against my Rams.
Right.
That's what I'm doing. All right. Let's see if I can do this. And
I just said, I did. I just couldn't take it. I pared back. Just on principle, I pared back my Jets from 15% to 10%. I just can't have Jets versus Buffalo be my top owned defense. I just can't.
I understand. All right.
Yeah. In before pick six, first position.
All right. So I'm just trying to edit one thing.
By the way, I happen to think the Jets are live in that game.
I do too. I was actually going to ask you about that because I had the same thing. Yeah, I certainly think they could get there. All right. Let's talk a little bit real quick. And guys, pop in some questions and stuff. Lockett or Metcalf? That's just a question you could ask every week.
The answer is just play them both. I mean, whatever.
If you want to stack the game, sure.
Yeah, of course.
But I think that, in terms of like each of them, I don't know. I think it's close. Personally, Lockett's going to look a little bit better projection wise, I believe, because he's a little bit cheaper and they sort of grade out the same. So I personally like Metcalf a little bit better, but I think it's really close between the two of them. And I also really like Kenneth Walker in that game, which I didn't. Boyd versus Higgins. It's Higgins for me, but I like both of them. If you're playing stacks, you play both of them. If you're playing these guys individually, I would play Higgins over Boyd, but I think they're both good plays. How about you, Sheets? Any to take on the Higgins Boyd?
Higgins has to be better, right? I mean,
he's a better overall possession PPR type of receiver. Boyd tends to get more big plays, but
Boyd's like found of youth, I think, right? I mean,
well, with no Chase, yeah, it's a lot easier. He got hurt in that other game, but Boyd is really good still. I mean, they just have all really good receivers, and I would include Hayden Hurst into the mix of those guys. Guys, keep firing on any questions or thoughts. We'll talk about a couple other things. Let's see. I'm trying to see if there's any low, like super low owned off the board plays that I wanted to get to.
Well, we'll talk about FanDuel in a minute.
Let's talk about FanDuel then.
Because I'm just rebuilding right now, and FanDuel is tougher with respect to Deion Johnson. Or Deion Jackson.
Easier to play him.
Yeah, well, that makes it a tougher decision, right? I mean,
yeah, I don't think it's
when I run the first set of whatevers, it literally wants me to give me 100% of it. You know what I mean? I can't do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's being well over projected, and I think on DraftKings, that's why I just have 0 of them on DraftKings. Maybe I threw him into. Did I end up with him in one? Oh, I have him in. I have
barrel at 12-13% or something on DraftKings.
Yeah, I've got him in one single entry thing, but I don't love it. Yeah, it's. I mean, I don't know. I'm not as. I think on FanDuel it's 5K. It's certainly reasonable, but you've got some other cheap plays over there. Drake London is 5,600. That feels too cheap. Everybody feels cheap and affordable over on FanDuel. I like Fournette's price at 7,100. Even Eckler at 9,400 is totally gettable. It really makes you want to stack up the LA Atlanta game over there for me anyway. Crazy for going Lawrence and fading 18. I don't think that's crazy. I'm not doing it, but I don't think it's crazy. Sheets, any? You said you like that Vegas game. Do you any of it? Jacksonville side stack?
Yeah, I like Zay Jones. I like Etienne.
And Christian Kirk.
Yeah, I like Zay Jones. I guess that's my that's whatever. Now I just reran the FanDuels, and I'm getting I'm not getting at least I'm not getting 100 with the Deion Jackson. I was getting like 65% of them now.
That feels like a lot.
It does, right? I mean, who's
but
really
maybe,
gonna...
60, but it is. I mean, he's like so much cheaper than everybody else.
I guess so, huh?
Over there, and it's like it just made me feel like, why am I even bothering with him on DraftKings? You know, just because he I don't know. And for what he's worth, he's looked okay. Like, you know, when they've given him some run, but it's not a good matchup. 17-point total. Let's see. I'm just going to grab my FanDuel notes here because I mean he it's like a weird projection thing of how much better he projects than the other running. But actually, it's sort of evened out a little bit. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So which Charger guy are we waiting on? Parham or Palmer?
Neither. Carter.
Oh, okay, sorry.
And that is one worry about Parham is out today, but about what Herbert can do, because he can really spread the ball around, and you might see like 4 or 5 different receivers get snaps, and you're definitely going to see 3 different tight ends get snaps. So it's just a little worrisome that the touchdowns end up not going to our guys if you do stack that game. The Williams and Swift thing, the only reason you should be deciding that is if you're going to play Williams at this point. Swift hasn't had more than 7 carries since the first game of the season, and clearly has looked banged up. So Swift is just a large field flyer and sort of been their pass catching back. But I'm actually low on Williams too. I just think there's other better plays. So yeah, Williams probably gets more carries than Swift, but we don't know when it's going to turn around back or how healthy he actually is. Go ahead, Chief.
I will say that again, I did this exercise for a reason. On FanDuel, I'm getting a lot more Chargers than on
that whole game
than on DraftKings.
Well, it's going to make that that whole game is going to look because of Drake London's price especially.
Oh, okay, right. Okay,
yeah,
that makes sense.
And people who want to play Everett, I think that's totally fine. I mean that is the logical option when you're missing all these guys and it's a good team you want to play. But it's hard for me to pay 48 for Everett over Pitts. And then I just like the 3K range enough to where I'm not using any Everett myself, but I certainly don't mind it.
I mean, the real beneficiary of all this is Eckler. I mean, like,
yeah. So if I was playing, and you can answer this one too because you've actually got it, Trevor Lawrence, I would probably play Ingram and Kirk or some sort of form of that. Maybe Jones and Ingram, and maybe Jones and Kirk.
Yeah,
something like that. Sheets.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting more Jones than Kirk, but yeah. And Everett.
Yep.
I mean, I like the Everett. I like Everett.
Yeah. I just have a hard time. I'm having a hard time getting to him. All right. Let's see what else we got here. All right. So I'm looking at some of my lower owned plays, and I'm still going to take some shots, even though it looks sort of suspect on Mooney. I actually think that Claypool being there might benefit him even, and I think they're going to have to throw the ball a lot. I think Rondale Moore in that game is an interesting way to get different in the Seattle-Arizona game because a lot of the rest of it's going to be chalky. So I'm doing a little bit of that. Khalif Raymond's still not showing up as much of a projection play, but I have some of that. I don't mind Curtis Samuel or McLaurin. I actually like McLaurin better. Those are a couple of own plays that I've got a little bit of. Adam Thielen, and I'm not sure where Kirk is standing on. Oh, and I have a lot of the Drake London to go with my Charger receivers. Chris Kirk is not going to be very owned today either, so I kind of like getting to him. And I don't think Zay Jones is going to be all that owned either. So those are sort of my main, under 10% guys. I do think there's an argument for Cooper Kupp if you can find a way to get him in. It's kind of hard to do, but if you can, I think that's a reasonable play. And the guy who I'm really most afraid of not having, and I think he's projected to be the most owned receiver, is Tyreek Hill. Just terrifying.
Yeah, I'm with the field on that, I think.
Yeah, it's very hard for me to get to him this week, but it feels really bad. Like I can he'll just put up 35, 45, and then he gets a touch. Then he scores 2 touchdowns, and he ends up at 60 or something. It's just I can see that happening. So I do worry about not having much of him, but I like having a little bit of Waddle, which I do have.
He's good, Waddle.
Yeah. I mean, these guys both they're putting up an all-time best duo in history of football, receiving wise, by a long shot so far.
Yeah, I got a little more. I just bumped. Just so everybody knows, I just bumped a little bit of a more Higbee, just a little bit more.
Yeah, I think Higbee is very reasonable today. And I think I don't know what the Rams are going to do. They still want to try and run the ball. Washington stack, I didn't get to it, but I have no problem with it. It was sort of talked about by a couple other people that I heard about. I don't mind the McLaurin. It's fine. I think there's better places to stack on the slate, but I think that getting some McLaurin, Samuel makes some sense. I don't really want to play Heineke, who hasn't really hit a ceiling game, I don't think, ever in his career. And there's a bunch of guys in that price range. So I'll pivot that over to the Justin Fields. I would much rather play Justin Fields than I would Heineke. I think the ceiling is much higher. So that's where I'm at.
Just anybody plays on Yahoo, not a lot of, I'm just doing this, like not a lot of difference as far as ownerships over there, at least for me.
Mm-hmm.
Entries. Okay. Any questions in here, or?
Yeah, at the moment.
Just some heads up for those of you that do play the other sports. I will have I'm going out for a while. I'll be back by 4:30, and I'll get the NBA and NHL stuff up a little bit later. And it's a very small 3-game NBA slate on an NFL slate, which means no one's playing, which means I'm winning.
That's right. That's what you do.
Yep. But if you guys want to listen, you guys want a second, you can feel free to check out the projections. They'll be up there with plenty of time.
Awesome.
And what's his name's already up on the slate, already up there. The NASCAR's already up there from earlier today. And for those of you who are following, did very well in MMA yesterday.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Kind of got a little unlucky, I guess. I mean, not unlucky. I mean, I chopped the big one with, more people than I thought I was going to chop it with. Let's put it that way. I played 2 guys that I thought they were going to be much, and they were kind of low owned, but for whatever reason, we talk about this a lot. We don't talk about it enough as we should. It's one thing to have 2 guys being either high owned or 2 guys being low owned, but it's the combination of them that's really the relevant. And it was weird. Like I had 2 guys that were by themselves, like sort of low owned, but every lineup, like they had one, had the other. It was really weird. So that's I guess the way the construction worked out. So I had both of them, and you'd think that I have like 2 kind of like lower shown guys that should be enough to get me different. But the thing is that those 2 like kind of like went together. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it was kind of that's one of the flaws of ownerships. You know what I mean? Like they treat everybody as an individual, but the fact is that sometimes if you play one, then you're led to another or something like that.
Right. By the way, so Tony's asking, how did you do with the Breeders' Cup?
I got nosed out of $40,000. Thanks for asking, though.
Oh, Jesus, that's too bad.
It's all right. Yeah, and if anybody followed our picks, you followed them perfectly. You all got nosed out of something bad. If you didn't follow my picks, you did better. Let's put it that way. But it was listen. Hopefully, you guys got something out of the the process at least. And I keep threatening to do more of it, but we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
Everybody did get and there's some really bad beats, but they were actually fun. Like I did my MMA betting stuff, and I played like 4 different like really fun long shots. Like I had fighters to win, not only the fighter, but in an actual specific round. And I got screwed like 4 different times. I won. I had a guy to finish in the second round. And you could tell the guy was totally dead as he got to the end of the first round. And all the guy had to do was survive like 10 more seconds, and you knew he'd be dead in the second round. And he tapped out with like 5 seconds to go in round 1. And then another one, I had someone to finish in the second round, and this person was just about to tap and just forgot to tap. And then the third round they lost. So they were kind of fun sweats though, like big 8-to-1 shots that didn't come in, but everybody was sweating. That was a lot of fun. I'm definitely gonna do more of that, like the MMA betting stuff, because that was really listen. It was an enjoyable video to do, and people seem to get something out of it. So, yeah,
nice, awesome. Well, good luck to everybody today. Sheets, good luck
today.
I have
one other announcement. There will be Showdown slate also put up there. Probably won't put that up until I would say halftime of the second games, so maybe like 5:30, 6 o'clock. What I'll probably do is I'll put those up same time I do the NBAs. But everybody will have them up in plenty of time for to try to get even with the Showdown slate.
All right, sounds good. Well, good luck to everybody today. Hopefully we'll see some screenshots in Discord.